The courtroom was silent as the victim stepped forward. Her voice shook as she described the years of trauma caused by the crime. When she finished, the judge's expression had changed. Moments later, he handed down a sentence far beyond what the prosecution had recommended. But should victim impact statements have that much power? Do they ensure justice, or do they introduce emotion into what should be an impartial process? Victim impact statements are presented at the sentencing phase of a trial. Unlike witness testimony, which is used to establish guilt or innocence, these statements focus on the aftermath of the crime. Victims or their families can explain how they were physically, emotionally, and financially affected. They may describe medical bills, psychological trauma, or the loss of a loved one. These statements can be delivered in person, read aloud by a prosecutor, or submitted in writing. Supporters of victim impact statements argue that they play a crucial role in the justice system. They provide victims with a sense of closure, giving them a voice in a process that otherwise focuses on the defendant. Judges often consider these statements when deciding on sentencing, using them to gauge the true harm caused by the crime. For example, in cases of violent crime, hearing firsthand from a survivor can reinforce the severity of the offense, potentially leading to a harsher penalty. However, critics argue that victim impact statements introduce subjectivity into sentencing. The legal system is designed to be impartial, focusing on laws and evidence rather than emotion. Some worry that emotionally powerful statements could lead to disproportionately harsh sentences, particularly in high-profile cases where public sympathy is strong. Others argue that disparities arise when victims are unable or unwilling to speak, leading to inconsistent sentencing outcomes. One of the most debated aspects of victim impact statements is their role in the death penalty. In capital cases, victim statements can be highly influential, swaying jurors and judges toward harsher penalties. Some legal scholars argue that these statements may unfairly tip the scales toward the prosecution, making sentencing more about the victim's suffering than the defendant's actions. Judges vary in how much weight they give to victim impact statements. Some use them as a factor in sentencing but rely primarily on legal guidelines. Others place significant emphasis on these statements, particularly in cases involving violent crime or repeat offenders. In some jurisdictions, laws limit how much influence these statements can have, ensuring that sentencing remains balanced. A real-world example of the impact of victim statements is the sentencing of Larry Nassar, the former USA gymnastics doctor convicted of sexually abusing hundreds of young athletes. More than 150 victims gave statements in court detailing years of trauma and its lasting effects. The judge cited these statements in her decision to impose a sentence far beyond the prosecution's initial request, demonstrating how powerful these voices can be in shaping justice. Some judges believe victim impact statements offer valuable insight, while others argue that they can lead to emotionally driven sentencing. Judge Smith, a veteran of the bench, once said, "I've seen cases where a single statement turned a moderate sentence into life in prison." Different legal systems handle victim impact statements in varying ways. In the UK, their influence is strictly limited to prevent emotional bias from affecting sentencing. Meanwhile, in the US, they can be a defining factor in how a case is resolved. This raises a critical question: should there be stricter rules on their use? Despite the debate, victim impact statements remain a fixture in the criminal justice system. They provide a voice to those who have suffered, reminding the court that crimes are not just abstract legal violations, but events that change lives. Should we allow emotion to influence sentencing, or should the law remain purely impartial? If you were the judge, would you let victim impact statements affect your final decision? Like and subscribe to 0 Hour Files for more in-depth legal insights and courtroom debates. As Mats Fredriksson wisely says, justice is not just about the law, it's about the people it protects.